Welcome to the worst tank that anyone can come up against in World of Tanks, and it is of course the FV4201 Chieftain, and this is a tank that nobody likes to come up against. It really does just devastate the matchmaker and creates just this horrible feeling in the opposite numbers side. So yeah, hopefully we're going to showcase exactly what Kunyik here can manage to do in this Chieftain, and by God is this one of the nicest replays I've seen in this tank, and even granted the fact that this tank is so good, it really is such a great replay to watch. Now then, Kunyik here is taking the aggression straight towards the opponent here, and you can see the Shah Future has come around that corner a little bit too far, albeit he thinks he will be able to get away with it, but unfortunately for this Shah, for some reason he doesn't decide to back up, and that is going to be the ending of the Shah Future 4 here. And you can see Kunyik trying to go for the tracks of the Shah so he can lock him down and keep him in that kind of position where he's able to just pump out damage into him, but unfortunately he doesn't manage to do that. But it doesn't really matter when you've got the reload of the Chieftain here to be able to just pump rounds out, and unfortunately for the Shah, that is the end. Now there is a Chrysler GF here against Kunyik here, but it doesn't really matter because of course he knows the weak point of the Chrysler, and the Chrysler, albeit is a fairly decent tier 8 heavy, it doesn't have quite the pack-a-punch that the Chieftain does, and unfortunately he does take a hit there from the AMX M4, which is a little bit disappointing I can assume, but he does place a nice round in there with the good reload of the Chieftain and the great penetration, albeit he is firing exclusively premium ammunition in this game, but I don't really blame him all too much considering the result that he's about to have and the carry that he's about to perform. Now there's a Type 5 that's thinking he's so good coming around that corner, but it's probably not going to be the case, and with the pinpoint accuracy that Kunyik has right now, he's able to just place rounds into the weak points of pretty much everything he's coming up against, and placing rounds into the Type 4 heavies flat lower plate is always fun. Now this Chrysler is thinking he's continually going to poke Kunyik, and every single time it feels like he gets penned, and that's probably a mistake there by the Chrysler, just trying to poke even though he's going to be getting hit every single time. But that doesn't matter all too much because Kunyik here being very aware of the scenario straight ahead, and that is exactly what all of these great players do in World of Tanks, is that yes, you can focus one singular tank that could be a threat, but why not focus all of the ones that are going to be the threat? And you can see here placing rounds into that weak point of the Type 5 or Type 4 there, sorry, and that's where you can see the best players separating themselves out from just like the decent players or good players. And this is where, you know, you definitely don't want to be coming up against a Jaeger who will, by all intents and purposes, pen your turret armor, even with you being in a pretty decent position. But equally, you can pen the Jaeger in its superstructure, firing the premium ammunition of this tank. And you can definitely pen the Type 4 heavy through the front with that very flat armour. And this is where, you know, aiming for that cupola up here on the Type 5 is exactly what you can do, and that is exactly what Kunyik manages to do in this replay. Now the Jaeger is being a little bit of a pain because ultimately you don't want to be taking any hits from that, because you can only take literally 2 shots from the Jaeger, which is not ideal whatsoever. And Kunyik here goes for the tracking shot but somehow manages to pen because wargaming, and you can see here that the Jaeger is now coming around the corner just trying to put out a shot, and unfortunately for the Jaeger that will be the end of his little run and stint within this game. As you can see, Kunyik putting a nice round. Oh no, it isn't, because he low rolls by 60 damage there, leaving him on such a low amount of hit points. But never mind, alas, the Jaeger ends up back in the garage there after the nice shot into the lower plate angled down. Now he somehow manages to spot the Batchat, uses the intuition perk to be able to swap between the HE rounds and the premium ammunition to finish off the Batchat in one singular shot. AT-15's ass here, which is always a nice one. And with the HE round still loaded, he's able to put one in there. Notices that there's no point in firing HE now, so no point in loading it, and therefore he's going to put a nice one into the side of the Skoda T56, which could, in all essences, pen him through the front of this, but the Skoda doesn't seem too bothered about doing that, and so he's just going to sit here, hold down against the Skoda to hopefully bounce a few rounds. Now, if you've been paying attention to the scoreboard, you'll notice that his team are just being absolutely rinsed of pretty much everything left on them. And you can see that it's 12 to 8, so the enemy team are up by 4 tanks, and of course that is going to rest on the laurels here of Kunyik if he can manage to bring back this game from the clutches of defeat. But coming up against this Skoda T56, it can be painful because, yes, by all intents and purposes, you can pen the weak point of that tank, but you need to do it quickly, and if he continually bounces off of the Skoda, it could be all the curtains for the team. And luckily he does manage to escape here, and he notices that he does need to get into a bit of a better position to be able to deal with the remaining enemy tanks, and albeit they only have 3,292 hit points on their team, which means that it is definitely doable within this game. But with a 703-2 on the friendly team, who's now at kind of holding off that flank, he needs to really help out. So the Grilla there managing to bounce, which is perfect because the Grilla is a pretty dangerous number that he definitely doesn't want to get hit by, considering the 750 alpha that tank has. So he goes forth, and this is exactly what he needs to do. He needs to clutch one side of the map, and he goes for the T26E5 there, shuts him down, and therefore he can move through this flank. So he decides that now is the time to focus. He's only got 7 rounds left, 2 of them being HE, so he needs to be very careful as to what round he's going to be firing. But nonetheless, he progresses on this side, realises that the enemy team have actually moved around behind him, and so he needs to turn around and help out with that side. The AMX M4 that you noticed at the beginning of the game has come around, and now it's looking terrible for him. He needs to be careful from this side. He's got an AMX from the other side. He's now got the Patriot who's coming round. He places a nice one into the Grilla. The T26E5 Patriot bounces from behind. He now turns and hopefully can manage to get it. The Patriot then only deals 266 damage. And now the Patriot's in a terrible spot here. He's coming up against his tier 10. He's set on fire, which just makes it an unbelievable luck there coming up against him. It leaves him with 1 round now against the AMX M4. I believe the AMX was on a one-shot within this game, so it could be won, but he would have to get very, very lucky. And yeah, with 28 hit points, the AMX could potentially just fire HE to be able to get rid of the remaining hit points, and luckily he manages to outspot the AMX, and with 12,641 damage done, this is an oh my god, I was not expecting him to somehow come out with a win in this result, but he manages to do it, and that is exactly what the best players can do. They do things that you just don't expect in the slightest, and albeit he does have to get a little bit lucky to have a result like this by the means of the AMX there bouncing off of the back of him and some of the Patriots bouncing off of him, but there we go, that is the tank. That is what a tier 10 versus a tier 8 can do, and that is why he took advantage of it. He loads, of course, the final HE round, and it could all come down to this. If he gets splashed by the artillery anywhere, even close or remotely close to him, that will be the game ender. And of course, when you have such a low ammunition count of just 1 HE round left, yes, you can take out the artillery in 1 hit, but you have to make sure it doesn't splash the artillery, leaving him on very low hit points, meaning that you would have to ram the artillery piece before he's able to reload, or potentially during his reload. Yeah, I hope that he manages to finish this game off and ends up with the win, but we don't know as of yet. And of course, hunting down the tier 10 artillery piece is not something that I've ever enjoyed within World of Tanks, and certainly I wouldn't want to start here. The Batchat 55-58 manages to get spotted, and he manages to shut him down in that one-shot. Kunyik with probably the best chieftain replay I've seen in a long time, and of course hopefully you did enjoy this replay as well. And yeah, what a result for him here. Of course, in a lovely skin, and yeah, I really do think that this replay showcases exactly why most people fear the FV201 Chieftain. And of course, if you want to check out any more replays of tanks similar to the FV4201 and just insane replays, then of course I will leave one on the left of the Kranvang, and of course on the right hand side I'll leave the playlist to all of the great replays and tank reviews that we've done so far. So of course check those out, and I hope that you join me there, and of course subscribe if you aren't already, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.